Tonight, the search for answers in Aurora. At services today, the victims of this mass shooting were remembered. John Blackstone has the story of a 13-year-old who struggled to save the youngest victim.
It's horrifying picturing in my head what I saw that night.
At the same time, new details about accused killer James Holmes. Jim Axelrod has that as Holmes prepares to appear in court. Also, Joe Paterno's iconic statue removed. Armin Katayan details the unprecedented sanctions to be imposed on Penn State's famed football program tomorrow.
This is the CBS Evening News with Jeff Glor reporting tonight from Aurora, Colorado.
And good evening, everyone. The epicenter of this tragedy is the theater behind us, but tonight the focus of the investigation and the remembrance has moved well beyond. Some explosives and chemicals removed from James Holmes' apartment have been destroyed, though investigators saved samples that are being sent to the FBI lab in Quantico, Virginia. The accused killer and former science student who posed with brightly dyed hair for a photograph is scheduled to appear in court for the first time tomorrow morning. And President Obama arrived late today near Buckley Air Force Base, which lost 2 servicemen in the shooting. He will meet privately with families of some of the victims. As the immensity of the toll comes into more focus tonight, the driving question remains, why? Barry Peterson begins our coverage.
The 12 dead have now all been identified. The youngest victim, 6-year-old Veronica Moser Sullivan. Her mother was shot in the throat and chest and remains in critical condition. An aunt struggled in church this morning as a pastor talked of the shooting.
And this whole region is in grieving.
Also among the dead, 18-year-old A.J. Boyk. At his high school last night, some who gathered were overwhelmed by his death. Longtime friend Jordan Crofter was at the movie with A.J.
It just sucks that he's gone. Out of anybody in that movie theater, he was the last one to deserve anything like this.
With 6 victims still in critical condition, Aurora's Mayor Steve Hogan has seen many of them and warns that the death toll may rise.
It is possible we might see more casualties.
Late yesterday, authorities detonated explosives found at Holmes' apartment. And in an exclusive interview today on Face of the Nation, Aurora Police Chief Dan Oates quashed rumors of an accomplice.
All the evidence we have, every single indicator is that this is all Mr. Holmes's activity and that he wasn't particularly aided by anyone else.
When police surrounded the theater, alert officers spotted Holmes wearing a non-regulation gas mask and realized he was not a member of the SWAT team. That led to his arrest.
Kudos to my 2 cops who grabbed this guy and that they spot and that sharp observation that they made immediately that led them to suspect him as being the suspect.
And while the investigation goes on, a city today tried to make sense of the senseless, as they did 13 years ago after the Columbine massacre. Josh Weidman was a high school junior during that shooting, lessons he is drawing on today as a pastor at Aurora's Elevation Church.
How do you help people deal with the anger?
The main way I help people deal with the anger is telling them that you have to live through that anger, but you just can't stay there.
In the court proceedings that begin tomorrow, Holmes will be advised by a judge that he is under investigation for homicide. And then the formal charges, Jeff, probably filed a little later this coming week.
Barry Peterson, thank you. As the gunman fired into that darkened theater, one of the youngest survivors tried to save the youngest victims. John Blackstone now with their heroic story.
At the church in the city today, Pastor Michael Walker told a story of heroism, how a 13-year-old struggled to save the life of 6-year-old Veronica Moser Sullivan, the youngest person to die.
If you can imagine a 13-year-old giving CPR to a 6-year-old who's dying, it's a tragedy.
That 13-year-old is Kaylin.
I'm still in shock. I don't think that it's hit me yet, what I've been through.
Kaylin's mother, Heather, asked us not to use their last name. They want privacy to recover, but agreed to share Kaylin's story.
She was trying everything she possibly could to save another human being.
Kaylin went to the midnight movie with 4 others, family and friends, including 6-year-old Veronica and Veronica's mother. Then the shooting started.
It was terrifying because I couldn't see the person who had done it.
She went to a simple movie with 5 people and 3 of them got shot.
When the shooting stopped, Kaylin tried to give Veronica CPR, but a wounded adult had fallen on top of the 6-year-old.
You're not a very big girl. That must have been a struggle.
Yeah. I was asking the person who was on top of the one I was trying to help if they could move, but they kept saying that they couldn't. They were numb, and I just was begging the person, just please try, please, because we have to get out of here.
She kept struggling until the police arrived.
I love that she thought of somebody else besides herself. That is amazing to me.
It's horrifying picturing in my head what I saw that night.
You say not a scratch on her, not a wound that we can see.
Right, but mentally, she's going to be dealing with this for a really long time.
Kaylin volunteers to help the homeless. She once shaved off all her hair for a cancer drive.
Sounds like she probably is a role model for some people.
Yeah, she absolutely, she is. Yep.
Now Kaylin will get some help. She'll start grief counseling this week. John Blackstone, CBS News, Aurora, Colorado.
Thank you.
Law enforcement officials are compiling a more complete picture tonight of James Holmes as they gather considerable evidence about his background. Jim Axelrod is following that part of the story. Jim, good evening.
Well, good evening, Jeff. Tonight, James Holmes is in solitary confinement in the jail behind me, separated from the rest of the male inmates, we're told, for his own safety. Investigators continue to work at why James Holmes apparently snapped and what was behind his alleged rampage.
That's why we brought in the FBI behavioral analysts. They're going to figure all that stuff out, and there'll be no easier, quick answers.
But the question of who James Holmes is seems even more challenging. The 24-year-old appears to have few connections with people. Yesenia Lujan lives in the apartment building next to where Holmes lived the last 14 months.
And we see everybody's faces, everybody's faces.
But you never saw his face?
Never once saw his face, and I lived here about 8 months now. Never once seen his face.
This resume, posted on Monster.com, suggests high intellectual functioning. Holmes was a Phi Beta Kappa neuroscience major at the University of California, Riverside, studying the flight muscles of hummingbirds, as well as an intern at the Salk Institute near San Diego, where he designed a computer program to illustrate brain injuries. He was also a camp counselor in Los Angeles, providing leadership and guidance, according to him, and being a positive role model for kids. But another online posting draws a stark contrast with that Holmes. It's a picture of him with dyed red hair, posted on the Adult Friend Finder a few weeks before the massacre, saying he's looking for a fling or a casual sex gal, asking any potential sex partners, "Will you visit me in prison?" The owner of a private gun range here says he received an application from Holmes just last month asking to join. The range owner called the phone number listed, no answer, but said he heard what he called a freakish voicemail greeting with a really weird voice. Jeff?
Jim Axelrod, thank you. Friday's deadly shootings have increased talk of gun control, but tonight there are few signs the issue will emerge as a major campaign issue this election year. Bill Plant is at the White House. Bill, good evening to you.
Evening, Jeff. That's right. The president and Mitt Romney did put their campaigns on hold over the weekend, but the tragedy in Colorado could inject new calls to control access to deadly weapons into this volatile election year. On Face the Nation today, New York Mayor Bloomberg, an outspoken advocate of gun control, challenged both the president and Romney to take action.
They want to lead this country, and they've said things before that they're in favor of banning things like assault weapons. Where are they now, and why don't they stand up? And if they want our votes, they better.
Both candidates have supported the Second Amendment right to gun ownership. The president, after the shooting of Arizona Congresswoman Gabby Giffords, wrote in an op-ed, "There's room for us to have reasonable laws that uphold liberty, ensure citizen safety, and are fully compatible with a robust Second Amendment." Challenger Mitt Romney, asked about Second Amendment rights in a town hall meeting, put it this way.
I believe that people should have the right to bear arms for whatever legal purpose they have in mind. Simple answer.
Colorado Democrat Ed Perlmutter, whose congressional district includes Aurora, says it should be up to Congress to do something about the ease of obtaining weapons.
You know, should we reinstate the assault weapons ban? I think we should, and I think that's where it starts. We ought to be taking a look at how this guy was able to accumulate so much ammunition. He had enough ammunition for like a small army. I mean, there's something wrong about that.
But Wisconsin Republican Senator Ron Johnson says the real problem isn't weapons, and more legislation is no solution.
It's really an issue of freedom. And I swore an oath to defend the Constitution. And part of that Constitution is the Second Amendment, which guarantees the right to bear arms. And these types of laws infringe upon that right.
Neither the president nor Romney are likely to take up Mayor Bloomberg's challenge to engage on gun control. The National Rifle Association remains one of the nation's most influential lobbies, and there are plenty of gun owners in states like Ohio and Florida, swing states which are key to winning the presidency. Jeff?
Bill Plant, thank you. Hollywood studios are officially withholding their final box office numbers until after the weekend in the wake of what happened here in Colorado. The Dark Knight Rises took in up to $162 million, though, according to estimates. That is below studio expectations, but still would be a record for a 2D movie. Coming up on the CBS Evening News, Joe Paterno's statue removed as Penn State awaits punishing sanctions from the NCAA. Tomorrow, the NCAA will announce what CBS News has learned will be unprecedented sanctions against Penn State University in the wake of a child sex abuse scandal. Early today, the school removed its statue of the legendary former coach Joe Paterno. According to the White House, President Obama said, quote, "It was the right decision." Armin Katayan has more on what all this means for the school, its football program, and Paterno's legacy.
The Penn State community awoke to a double dose of bad news today. The iconic statue of Joe Paterno, its once revered football coach, had been removed, and its beloved football team is about to get hit with unprecedented sanctions by the NCAA. A top NCAA official told CBS News the unprecedented scope of the penalties center on their length and impact, but do not include the so-called death penalty, the suspension of the program for a year or more. The source said they do include probation, a loss of football scholarships, a ban on postseason bowl games, and a hefty fine, which in the long run will cut far deeper into the program.
I think what the NCAA is really going after here is the culture of the program, and so much of that, I think that's what they're really trying to punish.
NCAA President Mark Emmert will announce the sanctions tomorrow morning. Last Monday, in an interview with Tavis Smiley on PBS, his brewing anger over the Sandusky scandal was evident.
I don't want to take anything off the table. I don't know that past precedent makes particularly good sense in this case because it's really an unprecedented problem.
The problem is defined in the 267-page Freeh report authored by former FBI Director Louis Freeh, was summed up like this. In order to avoid the consequences of bad publicity, the most powerful leaders at the university, former President Graham Spanier, Vice President Gary Schultz, Athletic Director Tim Curley, and Paterno, repeatedly concealed critical facts relating to child sex abuse allegations against Sandusky from authorities. Early this morning, in a devastating blow to his once pious image, Paterno's larger-than-life statue was hauled away, leaving behind his words on a wall. They ask me what I'd like written when I'm gone. I hope they write I made Penn State a better place, not just that I was a good football coach. Words that now, more than ever, carry a hollow, damning ring. Armin Katayan, CBS News, New York.
Overseas, 3 civilian contractors were killed in Afghanistan today. It happened in Herat province when a gunman wearing an Afghan uniform opened fire on foreign contractors. NATO also says 5 troops have been killed in roadside bombings over the past 2 days. There is no word on nationalities. Ahead, the fighting intensifies in Syria as street battles spread in two main cities. That story is next. Fierce fighting is reported in Syria's two biggest cities tonight. The street battles have left parts of Damascus and Aleppo in ruins, and it's forced thousands more to flee the violence. Elizabeth Palmer is in neighboring Lebanon.
Until very recently, Syria's two main cities, Damascus and Aleppo, have been bubbles of relative stability. But in recent days, fierce fighting has sent a flood of refugees over the border into Turkey or here into Lebanon. They're seeking safety from a civil war that has finally come to their doorsteps. In my home, I could see the helicopters bombing and tanks firing missiles, says this woman from one of the northern suburbs of Damascus. In the capital, Syrian soldiers have regained control of neighborhoods that had fallen at least in part to opposition fighters. State television told viewers government troops were mopping up remnants of what they've always called the terrorists. But as the fighting dies down in one area, it flares up in another. Aleppo has seen fierce clashes over the past 48 hours. It's been a center of support for the president, but that is now clearly fraying. As for President Bashar al-Assad, he's appeared for the second time on television since a bombing that killed 4 of his top officials last week. But there is no confirmation on where exactly he is or to what extent he's in charge as the opposition offensive continues. Today, the Free Syrian Army claimed it had seized yet another border post on Syria's frontier with Turkey. This has been the bloodiest week since the Syrian conflict began. 1,260 people killed, and of them, 299 were Syrian government forces. Elizabeth Palmer, CBS News, Beirut.
The worst rainstorm in 6 decades has swamped China's capital, Beijing. Nearly 9 inches of rain fell overnight, flooding roads and collapsing rooftops. At least 37 people are dead. Thousands of others were forced to higher ground. Hundreds of flights were canceled at Beijing's airports. Norway today remembered its own mass killing. 77 people, most of them teenagers, were killed 1 year ago when a gunman opened fire at a youth camp after setting off a bomb in Oslo. Another 240 people were hurt. The confessed killer, Anders Behring Breivik, faces sentencing next month. The 2012 Summer Olympics opened Friday in London, and today the Olympic torch relay reached new heights. A 17-year-old girl held on tight as she raised the flame far above Big Ben on top of a capsule attached to the giant observation wheel known as the London Eye. She called the view of the British capital amazing. We'll be right back. With 57 people shot, what happened here was the worst mass shooting in modern American history. 12 people dead, most in their 20s, all with decades of life ahead of them. Navy officers knocked on a front door in the Chicago suburbs, delivering the worst possible news to John Larimer's family. Stationed at Buckley Air Base, he was one of 3 military men killed. Airman Jesse Childress from the same base loved comic books, had nicknamed his car the Batmobile. Jonathan Blunk had served in the Navy. A father of 2, he threw himself in front of his girlfriend during the shooting. Matt McQuinn also died shielding his girlfriend. They worked together at a Target store. Alexander Tevis pushed his girlfriend to safety as well. He had just earned a master's degree in psychology. Rebecca Wingo worked in a restaurant while earning her degree. She was a mother of 2. Alex Sullivan went to the screening to celebrate his 27th birthday. His first wedding anniversary would have been today. Jessica Gowie, an aspiring sportscaster, narrowly avoided a multiple shooting in Toronto just last month. Michaela Medic was attending college and saving money to travel to India. A.J. Bowick just graduated high school. He loved making pottery and wanted to be an art teacher. Gordon Cowden, the oldest victim, had his 2 teenagers with him. They both escaped unharmed. And Veronica Moser Sullivan was the youngest, only 6 years old. Her mother remains in intensive care. And Veronica's mother is one of 9 shooting victims still listed in critical condition tonight. That is the CBS Evening News. Later on CBS 60 Minutes. I'm Jeff Glor reporting tonight from Colorado. Good night.
On television, online, on the go, and now free on iPad. CBS News.